So, just a couple comments for you about the references to the book in Revelation. I know most of the time we jump quickly out of the book of Revelation to try to explain what the book is, but I would want to spend some time in the context of the book of Revelation to talk about the book. So, the book is mentioned 78 times here in Revelation chapter 5. By the way, the concept of the book is also mentioned 78 times in Revelation chapter 22. Um, in Revelation chapter 22, by the way, it's this book, the book of Revelation, the book that he's writing, is mentioned 7 times. The eighth mention of the book in Revelation 22 is the book of life. So Revelation 22, the end of the book of Revelation, actually basically mirrors this beginning part of here of Revelation, Revelation chapter 5, with the mention of the book 7 times. Um, Actually, the book of life is mentioned in the book of Revelation. Guess how many times?
7.
7 times. That's right. So the book of life is mentioned 7 times throughout the book of Revelation. Um, and then when you focus on the book throughout the book of Revelation, the book comes into focus here in Revelation chapter 5. Okay, and then there's the opening of the seals. It isn't until all the seals are opened that you see the angel in Revelation 10 with a what's in his hand?
A little book,
The little book, but what's the position of the little book?
open.
It's open. So so here in Revelation 5, there's a book that the Lamb is worthy to open, and then the seal process the seals are actually the process of him opening the book. And when you get to Revelation 10, you're actually in the sixth trumpet. So he comes down and he has this little book open. So the book is open. And of course, so that's significant. Now, I know most of the time we don't connect the open book in Revelation 10 to the sealed book that needs to be open in Revelation chapter 5, but I'm telling you in the context of the book of Revelation that it's the same book. Now, the the book will become prominent again in Revelation where? Well, it actually becomes prominent again in Revelation, talking about the book. It's going to be
13.
Revelation 20. After you go from Revelation 10, there's only a couple mentions of the idea of the book of life, but usually those are in the context of the beast or the harlot in Revelation 13 or Revelation 17. In contrast, their names are not written in the book of life. But then in Revelation 20, there's this another pattern that occurs. In Revelation 20, there's books that were opened, and then the dead are judged out of those books. And then there's another book that's opened in Revelation 20, which is the book of life. Now, I find that pattern interesting because remember in Daniel 7, verses 9 through 12, the sixth part connected to 1844, it describes a judgment as that the court was seated and the books, plural, were opened, right?
Mm.
So that's
Yes.
described the judgment. And then Revelation 5 is saying that there's another book that's open in Revelation 5, because the books being open, the judgment actually begins in Revelation chapter 4, as we noticed when we studied Revelation 4. So Revelation 20 says there's books that were open and they were judged out of those books. And then there's another book that's open, the book of life. Well, it's the same thing happens here with Revelation 4 and 5. In Revelation 4, 1844, books were opened and judgment began. But in Revelation 5, another book is opened, and that book is a special book. And according to the context here that I'm seeing in Revelation 20, Revelation 5, one of the aspects of the book that the Lamb is opening is actually it's the book of life. Um, so, by the way, it's going to take on many connotations. So, if we're talking about, well, first of all, I want you to see the pattern again, Revelation 4 and 5. The pattern is repeated in Revelation 20. And that's very interesting because Revelation 20 is the judgment that takes place at the end of the 1,000 years, right? So we're actually dealing with the process is repeated again after the thousand
The
years.
third
Does
coronation.
that make sense? Yes, the third
Interesting.
coronation. So what I'm saying is what I see, what we're seeing here in Revelation 5. is the second coronation, is repeated again in Revelation 20 with the third coronation, which then again, the context of the book of Revelation is establishing a pattern here that gives evidence or credibility to understanding what's going on in Revelation 5.
Question.
I think that that's very significant. Yeah,
So, I mean, I understand there's the book of that, our names are written in and God doesn't want to blot our names out of. But then there's also the book of Deuteronomy. And it came to pass when Moses had made an end of the writing of the words of the law of the book until they were finished, that Moses commanded the Levites to bear the Ark of the Covenant. Take this book of the law and put it in the side of the Ark of the Covenant. So these are different books, even though we're kind of judged by God's law.
that's right.
It's a whole different, or is it kind of the same context?
Well, it depends. So if you're in, yeah, so if you're reading Deuteronomy 31, isn't that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah. So in Deuteronomy 17, when they dealt with the laws of kingship, they were to take a copy of the book of the law. The king
right.
was to make a copy for himself. But yeah, so the book of the covenant, the book of the law, in terms of the articles of kingship, were put in a pocket on the side of the ark.
Yeah,
And by the way, Samuel says the same thing in First Samuel 10, right? So the same thing happens again. So see, this book has many connotations. First of all, as we mentioned, it's the book of life. By the way, it's actually called the Lamb's Book of Life in the book of Revelation. It's also the book of the law, as you just mentioned in Deuteronomy. It's also the book of the covenant, that's also mentioned in Deuteronomy. Um, it's also called the book of remembrance in Malachi. Um, so this book is, of course, it's if it's the Lamb's Book of Life, it's if it's anything like the Lamb, which is it is, then it's like a diamond. It has many facets to it.
that's why it's book
So
singular, even though there's multiple books.
well, it's just like the idea, the trees in the Garden of Eden, where there's many trees in the garden, right? But then there's the tree of life. And so all the other trees in the garden would feed, you can eat from them. There's only one you can't, right? So they all become a reflection, but the tree of life is special. It's actually the tree that actually represents the presence of God. And of course you see the multiple fruits and all that. It's the same idea. There's books and then there's a book of life. And there's water, but then there's the water of life. And there's bread, but there's the bread of life, right? So this book has many different, can have, different connotations based on the context that you're reading. So you'll notice that the books is written in verse 2. It's written on within and with on the back side. So it's written on both sides. So there's a couple connotations to that. Actually, the first thing that comes to mind should be, the Ten Commandments, right? The Ten Commandments were written on both sides of the tables of stone, on the front and on the back. So this is, the book of the covenant. Also, the same book that Ezekiel was given to eat was written on both sides, and
Yes.
then Ezekiel eats the book. So, of course, then he has the experience of Revelation chapter 10 is
Yes.
repeated in Ezekiel's time, right? The sweet mouth and bitter in his stomach. By the way, which proves that the book in Revelation 10 and the book in Revelation 5 are the same book, because the book in Revelation 5 is described as written on both sides, within and without, on the backside. And that's the same way that the book of Ezekiel is described in Ezekiel chapter 2. It's written
Yeah.
within and on the backside. So you know that they're the same book. And that book that John's eating in Revelation chapter 10 is the book that has been opened by the Lamb by opening the seals, and he's eating that book in Revelation chapter 10. Does that make sense?
Which
Right. So
Ezekiel
the
actually,
idea,
sorry, Ezekiel actually wrote about in Ezekiel 12 about what would happen when there would be delay no longer.
right, that's right.
Yes.
And this is connected to Daniel because in Daniel chapter 12, when you see Michael stand up and you see the names found written in the book, well, all this was to be sealed because it's not time. So the sealing of the book has to do with a couple things. First of all, Isaiah says that the book is sealed because we can't understand it. It's a mystery. So even if you unsealed it and you read it, you give it to someone to read and he'd say, I can't read. Or you give it to someone who can read and he'd read it and then they'd say, I don't understand it. So it's sealed because it's not time. It wouldn't be understood.
Yeah.
But it's also so you know this idea that it's sealed in Daniel 12 and it's unsealed in Revelation chapter 5 means that the time that Daniel 12 is talking about has come to it's now it's come to pass.
Yes.
That's why it's described as the judgment of the living.
And when the book is unsealed, it leads to
And you'll
your
notice,
the truth being sealed in your forehead. So there's an unsealing and a sealing at the same time.
right, that's right. So if you're worshiping, and which we'll see the three anthems here in Revelation chapter 5, if you're worshiping the Creator, if you're worshiping the Lamb when the book is unsealed, then you receive the seal of God. And then your name is not removed from the book of life. But of course, if you do not worship the Lamb, then you receive a different mark or a different seal, and your name is removed from the book of life.
It would also make you conclude that what John saw and what Ezekiel saw are the same thing.
Right, that's right.
Yes.
And what Ezekiel saw was the judgment of the living taking
That
place
that's
in whose
right.
day?
Yes. Very
Yes.
interesting.
And this is when the time should be no longer of Revelation 10 means that the prophecy is being fulfilled right in front of him.
Yes.
In Ezekiel, in the book of Ezekiel, he's told, don't tell them, don't let the people tell you that this is a prophecy that's far off. No,
Yes.
no, he says this prophecy, it's happening. It's right in front of you. And that's the
Yes.
same thing that Revelation 10, when he says time is no longer, he's saying this is happening.
Yes. It can actually be
This
translated
isn't a prophecy
as
about the future.
can be translated as delay no longer.